we're going to look at fractions of fractions. So multiplying a fraction by a fraction. And once again, we're going to try and pick some friendly numbers here and do it by modeling to start so we can actually understand what's happening when we are multiplying a fraction by a fraction. So once again, I think it's very important to read it in words first. So how much is half of 3/4? So if I get the question half of 3/4, it may be wrote out like this: half of 3/4. And you know, people 1/2 times 3/4, and then they start trying to do an algorithm, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. So what we're going to do is try and do it by modeling, and hopefully we can kind of visualize what's happening when we're being asked to do half of 3/4. So, you know, sometimes I picture this being, you know, a chocolate bar or you know, a 2x4 or something in construction, and you have 3/4 of something. So if this was maybe a chocolate bar, you have 3/4 of it, and half of it means you're going to split it into 2 equal parts, right? 2 equal groups. Maybe you get to keep half and your friend gets to take half. So if that was in real life and you had a chocolate bar that had maybe like a Kit Kat or something that was split into pieces, and you're going to give half to your friend, so you're starting with 3/4. That number, the second fraction there, is what you start with. You have 3/4 and you need to take half of that amount. And so if this was, you know, a situation there, you'd say, okay, well, I'm going to take this piece, give it to, you know, my friend, and I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to keep it myself. And then I've got this piece remaining, which is 1/4, and I have to split that up in order to share it equally. So I'm just going to imagine splitting that in half right there. So I've traded it out, and I'm just going to split it up. This person gets 1 and this person gets 1. So we both have the same amount here in both groups. Make these the same. And so here is my answer right here. So I just have to find a name for this. This is what my answer is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it back into our fraction kind of template here. So this rectangle is one whole thing if I go around the outside of it. So that's one whole thing. So what fraction of one whole thing would you know, the friend get in this case? So when you're trying to name this fraction, oftentimes what's helpful is just to look for the smallest piece. So this smallest piece right here, how big is that piece? So we need to find out how many pieces this size would it take to fill in the whole rectangle. So what I'm going to do is, there's a line going across here, so I'm imagining cutting everything in this full thing into the same size pieces. And once we do that, we can see that each of these little squares, it would take 8 of them to make one full thing. And then it's just a matter of counting, well, how many of these do we have? So this was 1/4, but I can also see that it's the same as 2/8, right? So this is 3 pieces out of 8 to make one full thing. So our answer to this question, what is half of 3/4? The answer is 3/8. Look at another example here. So last time we kind of split them up. On paper, what ends up happening is that's not necessarily something that's easily doable. You can't move the pieces around as easy. So what I would say to do is start by drawing 3/4. So we're doing half of 3/4. So that second number in your question, you're going to draw it. This is what I start with. And then from there, you're going to do a half of that amount. So then what I would do is say, okay, well, half. I did the fourths going vertical, so I'm going to do another cut. I'm going to cut every piece in half going this way. And once I do that, that's where I'm saying, okay, so now it's in 8ths, and I'm only going to shade half of what I have. So there's the shaded part here, this green part. I'm going to shade half of that again because that's going to represent what I would get to keep. So I would get to keep the top half of that. I would keep that, that, and that. So I've shaded half of the 3/4 that were shaded. Sometimes you'll see textbooks go and they'll shade this part too, and that really doesn't make sense. So we've had 3 pieces and we just cut it in half and shaded them, and then you can still see that it's 1, 2, 3 pieces out of 8. So this is 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, and that's still going to be our answer. All right, in our second example, we're going to do 2/5 of 2/3. So we're going to start by drawing what we start with in this scenario, which is the second fraction. So if this is in a textbook, it probably looks like 2/5 of 2/3.
Yeah.
It's fine. So there's 2/3, and this time the divisions are going horizontal. So now we're going to move on, and what we're going to do is shade the first fraction of that amount. So we're going to shade 2/5 of what is already shaded. So I'm going to try and do it freehand. So this is about half. I'm doing fifths. So I'm going to go a little bit to the left a half, a little bit to the right a half, and then cut those pieces in half. And it's not going to be perfect. Hopefully it's enough that we can see these. Alright, so these are fifths. And I'm going to cheat a little bit and move this over just a smudge. There. Alright, so now what we have to do is shade in 2/5. So there's our fifths, and I'm just going to shade in 2 of them. There's 1/5 shaded. There's 2/5 shaded. So our last step is to interpret our answer. So we're looking at how much do we have here in yellow. So if we kept 2/5 of 2/3, I can see if I'm using these, division lines still here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces shaded here. So I know that my answer is going to have a 4 in the numerator. Now the denominator is how many pieces this size does it take to make the full thing. So I'm going to have to imagine, what if I had cut the whole thing up? How many pieces would it have taken to make the full thing? And if you did that, you'd say, okay, well every row, every third I had, originally I cut it into 5 pieces. So I'd have 5 rows of 3, and you can just count them up. So that means that I'm going to have a denominator of 15. There's 15 pieces this size in the full thing, not just the pieces that were shaded, because we're talking about this fraction of the whole thing. So our answer here is 4/15.